abuse is far too common, unfortunately, anywhere in the world, and it carries lasting negative consequences for life. Survivors of such abuse can experience negative impact in their physical health, in their mental health, all into adulthood. Now, are the homes of people of faith immune to this problem? Are there parenting principles in the Holy Scriptures that can perhaps help prevent abuse and heal the scars of the survivors? Or does it reinforce physical punishment? What is the role of culture in all of this? These are some of the questions that we'll be talking and speaking about today. So, ladies, what do you think? This is a very hot topic.
Yes.
Anybody has stories?
I completely agree. I'm going to jump in because it may not be seen as child abuse to us as Filipinos, but...
Oh, that's right. You come from an Asian culture.
Yes.
It's different than the Western.
But as Filipinos, this is generally the type of discipline that parents would do to their kids.
Right.
So as a parent, if the kids get naughty, and their kids get naughty, type of discipline will be you kneel on mung beans.
What?
Sea salt.
Kneel on what?
Mung beans.
What is that?
Beans, like
Beans.
the tiny beans.
Ah,
beans,
okay,
mung
okay.
beans.
Little one.
Sea salt, or you get
Sea salt?
Yeah, sea salt.
That must be hurtful.
That hurts.
Oh yes, trust me, I've knelt on
Looks
those.
like you've been there.
Naughty.
That's why I've been good.
You are a good naughty. Okay.
Yes, I was a good naughty. And then you get whipped with leather belt,
Leather
or
belts.
a broomstick, or a branch of a tree, like the tiny branch of a tree.
Ooh, that hurts.
So
Yeah.
there was like one incident when my brother, I was probably kids. My parents were probably just could not just hands down was just too much for them
He
to
was
handle.
more naughty than you.
Yes.
He was not the good naughty.
I'm not sure if it was my father or my mother who did it, but they got a leather belt and whipped it, and it hit like in the inner thigh, and it left a scar and a wound.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if they went to the hospital. I could not remember, but it was traumatic for me. Like, I felt so bad. And another one I want to share, because these are the two incidents that just stuck in my head.
Stuck in your mind.
I still feel pain from those.
about it.
Just
and I was just
thinking about it.
traumatized. And my sister, this time, not me. Or else I wouldn't be telling the story.
A bunch of naughty kids.
My sister, I don't know what she did, but all I can remember was that she was put in a sack and dragged outside of the house.
Really?
And of course, who would not be scared? Like a kid would be scared. And she kept crying. And my mother said, if you won't stop crying because that's being disrespectful, I'm going to hang you on a tree. I'm like, what? So she kept on
This
crying.
is normal.
Wow.
This there is
Like,
compliance.
this is accepted in that culture.
I mean, I'm not angry at my parents.
Right.
That's how they were raised.
You're like, that's what they knew.
That was
Yeah,
the
that's
norm.
what they
Okay.
knew. So it was sad, but it was very traumatic. And I don't even know if my siblings could remember. But me as the eldest of the family,
so
I
you were the
remember.
eldest.
for
life.
Yes, and I said I would never do this when I have kids, but who knows, I would probably do the same because I
But
know
I don't
my
think
mother-
you're gonna
drag your kid in a sack. I
No,
don't
you're
think
not
so.
going to do the same.
Okay.
You don't
I
have
don't think
to.
so.
I would not.
Coming
think
from
so.
a Latino culture,
Yeah.
it's also very prevalent and acceptable within, especially with people without education. Educated people are beginning more and
Find
more.
other ways to discipline. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was a young parent, and I also had, I had a lot of baggage when I came in. And
You're naughty too?
and now I want to talk about my children. Forget about me, because I got my share. So my husband would still, give my son a little peck in the butt, smack in the bun and the bum and all that. But my favorite thing to do was, when my kids were being naughty, was to get them in their ear. And don't do
Get it
that.
red. Change the color.
I'm having flashbacks right now.
So my daughter, Eliana, up until this day, she says, Mom, I couldn't understand. My ear is attached to my head. Why were you pulling it? Yes, true. Why was I doing that? When I look back, And she barely got it because she was the third one. So
usually the last child gets last.
I did not get away with anything.
What happened with you?
What didn't happen with me? My family is Jamaican.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a totally different form of discipline.
Yeah.
From the
Tell us
looks
about it.
to the idea of my mom finding out. It wasn't even that something had to happen.
Wow.
She didn't even have to get to me. It was just the idea of her knowing
She had that vision.
I might have
You
done
did not
something.
get put in a sack.
Oh, no,
So
we didn't
what
get put in
would
a sack.
What
No.
happened?
What was your favorite?
I mean, my favorite? There was no favorite. I remember one time in particular, my sister and I had gotten into trouble together. And so my mom said, I am disciplining you together. And so I felt bad about this, and I confessed to my sister that after I said, I cannot take any more of this discipline, I started to cry, right, just loudly. And so I was like, well, maybe my mom will have mercy on me for just a few minutes. And so I allowed my sister to get more of the discipline that day. I felt really badly about it. Yeah. But, you know, the discipline was more of being nervous of how disappointed my mom was more than the discipline itself. It was the emotion of she knows something or she might know something, and that was fearful enough for us.
But that's a different kind of fear. I mean, I cannot imagine what your siblings went through.
Yes.
Because this is not, you're out on the street and somebody's doing this to you. These are the two people who gave you life, who were there to protect you and take care of you and nurture you, and they're
I know it seems very odd within your
Depending on the culture,
But
I maybe got the threat of a wooden spoon, but I don't think it ever even made contact.
No.
It never made contact.
How did your parents discipline you in that sense? If it wasn't physically, what kinds of ways did they?
Lucky you.
Honestly, I'm going to tell you, probably the worst thing was it wasn't doing things. It was my mouth that got me in trouble.
Okay.
And so my worst punishment was my dad saying, "You are not allowed to speak." Period.
So
For the
you
next
had to be
however many
quiet.
hours, you were not allowed
Quiet
to speak.
time.
Right.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Right. Quiet
Or
time.
my
15 minutes in the corner, looking in the corner.
Yeah, within my culture and being accepted, my mom never hit us, but my father always spanked us. It was never to that extent. It was always in the bum, and that was it. But just the fear of getting it was enough. However, I was not afraid. My sister was terrified. So she got it very, sporadically, poor thing. But it was a torment for her, just the idea of getting it. My father could spank me for hours, and I would,
But here's the thing.
See, people are different. The truth is that for some people, you carry that guilt, that shame, and fear, and that impacts people for life. Now, we have lots of questions. We've been talking about but there's somebody that's going to help us answer these questions. Our guest today is Dr. Kitty Fryer Randall. She is a psychologist joining us all the way from Loma Linda University. She's a child psychologist, actually. So we're very happy to have her here, and she will help clarify some of these issues. Welcome with us, Dr. Kitty.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, Dr. Kitty, can you start? You heard our conversation. You saw that many of us have experienced different kinds of discipline depending on the culture. Can you first explain to us what is known as child abuse or child maltreatment? How can we recognize it when it is actually maltreatment or abuse?
So child abuse is also called child maltreatment, and there are 3 types of abuse and 2 types of neglect. So we have sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. And with neglect, we have emotional and physical neglect. And unfortunately, this is something that we see across the globe, across culture, and it's how children are maltreated by adults in their lives.
So it manifests itself maybe different ways, but it is very common, and I think most parents actually may be actually abusing their child when they're thinking they're just disciplining them. Is that right?
Well, I was interested in the conversation you were all just having and how most of the women were talking about physical abuse. And in fact, physical abuse and emotional abuse are the most common.
We're going to have to take a break in just a minute, but I want to hear more from you. We'll be right back. We are speaking up about child discipline and child abuse today, and our psychologist is Dr. Kitty Randall from Loma Linda. She's helping us better understand this very important issue. So, Dr. Kitty, you were telling us about how parents can differentiate between child discipline and child maltreatment.
Yeah, obviously, children need boundaries and consequences for their behavior. But I think one of the elements that you need to be aware of as a parent or caregiver is how you're approaching the situation. For example, if I'm disciplining in anger, it's likely to be more abusive. And the other element that is important is, how is this experienced by the child? Are you teaching them a lesson? Are you providing a healthy boundary? Or are you trying to instill fear?
So even if...
But you didn't have a fear of being hurt.
No, I didn't have a fear of being hurt most times. But it was just the fact, no matter which way we went, it was scary because something wrong had been done and we got found out.
Right.
So even if it was a form of discipline that we didn't like, and I don't know who liked what form of discipline, but no matter what, gentle or not, the worst one was, I will deal with you later.
Yeah. So sometimes
like,
verbal abuse.
You gotta wait, and that wasn't verbal abuse to us.
No.
That was just the prolonging
announcement of what's coming.
The announcement, right?
So, but what she said is so key, isn't it? If it's done in anger,
right.
I don't know in your case, Llewellyn,
definitely, it was done in anger, and actually, I didn't even feel the love of my parents at that point. I'm understanding it now because I'm an adult, but way back when I was a kid, I felt that, hey, if I do something wrong, I get punished. It's not that my parents love me, but because I did something wrong, so I get punished.
So what kind of, for it to work, for something to be effective, there does have to be an element of, I don't like this.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's not
discipline.
So, Dr. Kitty, what do you think about this? I mean, what can parents do? Because there is the need for discipline, right? I think we all agree. How can they deal with this, knowing that they don't want to hurt their children for life?
So yeah, absolutely. We want to have discipline, and we want to have children to understand that boundaries are important and they're healthy. I think one of the ladies said, I didn't feel the love. And so as parents, we need to help our children understand the boundaries are there, and they're there because we care. And so we should do it, though, is in a sense of love and nurturing, and not in a sense of anger or fear.
Well, one of my children, my oldest child, my son, happy-go-lucky kid all the time. He never understood boundaries because he didn't care to. And one day he hurt his sister to the point that she hit her head against the glass, and she cut her scalp, and she was bleeding everywhere. And I was so scared and upset, and I beat him. That was the only time that I beat him. I felt so bad. It was because I knew better, but I did that in anger, in a moment of being very vulnerable. But I was able to tell him, I am so sorry.
So you convey the care and the love
afterwards. And up until this day, he knows that for me it was even harder to say I'm sorry. So he learned from that moment,
I've never remembered my Jamaican mom saying sorry. What I do remember is there was this one specific time she said, I do this, and she only had to say it once.
Because I care for you.
I love you.
I love you.
And so even though we didn't enjoy discipline, because again, who does? I always knew my mom did it because she needed us to be people of order, and she needed us to be people of discipline, because if she did not teach it to us when we were children,
it would be hard for you to learn later.
Wait a second. There's people out there who are going to say, well, so it's okay if I smack my kid
and then
as
say,
long as I say I'm
you.
sorry and say I did it out of love.
I don't believe in that.
So let's see what Dr. Kitty has to say on that, right, Llewellyn?
So what can we tell to our parents out there with different cultures?
Yes.
How can
Very important.
How can we discipline our child in a way that it's
appropriate,
that it's showing their love and concern
Dr.
with
Kitty,
the cultural.
what do you think? What can they do?
An important component of this, of course, is having a good relationship with your children. If you're spending time with them and you're acknowledging already that you love them and there's a good relationship there, and that there are times you're going to have to set boundaries in order for safety, but you're doing it because of care and concern. That's very different than a punishment that comes out of anger or frustration or fear. It may happen that a parent gets frustrated, and in those moments, they do need to go back and say, I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. But this should not become a pattern. If it becomes a pattern for a parent to discipline in frustration or anger, then they should be getting help. Remember not to discipline when you're
Dr.
upset.
Kitty, how would we then reconcile that the Bible says don't spare the rod? Within that culture was, that's what they did. They beat people, their children with the rod.
That is a very good question. So, Dr. Kitty, this is real. Many parents use that
Bible
text
verse,
as a way to say we should be doing this. So what can we tell those parents?
Yes, I often hear that from parents. If you spare the rod, you spoil the child. But actually, if we look carefully at how the rod is used biblically, it's talked about in a sense of being guided and nurturing, giving the right direction. Psalms 23 says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So it's comforting. The element here is the reminder that the parent should be the role model, the guide, to not let children run astray, but to help bring them along the path. But the elements of discipline within include saying that I'm here to be a model, a guide for you, not just to use a rod because I'm frustrated with your behavior. And you need to make sure that the discipline matches the situation that you're trying to address. You don't want to just spank to correct behavior, but what is it you can do that would actually make the child be able to learn how to better have handled those situations?
One last question.
Okay.
I'm just curious if Dr. Kitty feels like the effects, the lasting consequences of physical abuse are the same as emotional and psychological. Yeah.
So can you talk about that? What's the difference? Sometimes parents don't hit you, but they say a lot of things
Their words
to you.
can hurt just as much.
Is that worse than hitting or?
It's very rare that in physical abuse and sexual abuse, there isn't an emotional component. For many types of maltreatment, obviously the impact is long lasting. And the emotional impact of all maltreatment and abuse is something that we tend to carry with us for our life. For some individuals, you're going to see more depression or self-esteem or anxiety. For some, it can actually run into addiction or having to feel the soul with some kind of addictive behaviors.
So these lasting consequences can increase the risk, as you're saying, for addictions, for a low self-worth, and that can be for life then. When we see people with depression and sometimes even suicidal thoughts, can be the root cause can be on those kinds of experiences. Yeah, it's very. So what do you guys think? Did you like what she said? I think the issue with the biblical text, where we understand that it's more about guiding, knowing that whatever you're doing for the discipline has huge effects for life.
The part about thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Looking back, to be very honest, even though West Indian culture, if you grow up West Indian, you've survived a lot. Yes?
Now hold that thought, because we will be back to go deeper into that. I want to thank Dr. Kitty for joining us on that, and let's be right back with us for more of Speak Up. We are speaking up today about child discipline. Now, ladies, we were talking there, Luella, I interrupted you. What were you saying? Your thoughts on that?
Sure. I was just bringing back up the point that the doctor brought up about rod and staff and the whole comforting part. Yeah, surely discipline is not comforting, but it should have a positive effect in the long run. As an adult now, I have a niece and nephew, right? And I clearly see how my mom's effort in making sure that we turned out on a straighter path, how it all made sense, right?
Would you do things the same way?
Some things I would do the same way. I'm just in a different generation than my mom. So it's not
there are new ways maybe that you can provide that.
Just different ways.
Boundary.
We have two different personalities also, right? So I just do things a little differently when I'm dealing with my niece and nephew. But when I'm going to look back at it in a total scheme, I can see, all right, I get it.
Yeah,
I completely agree with her. You know what? If I would have kids, I would not spare the rod, but it would be something. It would be done like differently. It wouldn't be like putting my kid in a sack or beating them, but it would be like I have to sit down with them and let them understand what I'm doing. But it's not something that I would to beat them to death.
Yeah.
But
so using what you're saying in terms of using the rod as guiding them into what is better.
Yeah, but you are one person. I think research shows that if you have been treated that way, you are going to continue.
Well, but you can be the exception. The research also says that it's choices that parents can do and learn from it.
Yeah, but in terms of, because we are a global church and we do talk a lot about consider the culture, how can we move forward from that? Because this is a principle.
Sometimes culture is wrong.
That's my point.
So how do we do it? You have to go back to the one thing that never changed, which is Scripture.
So go from the principle. You know, it is, if it's wrong, it's going to be wrong here in America,
anywhere in the world.
Though I think the doctor brought up the good point with comparing the whole rod thing.
Exactly.
The comfort part makes a difference. Then when you wrap culture into it, truly, where your parents from the Philippines, you may have been born and raised in the Philippines, but that's not where you are right now.
Today.
So your influence is a little different. Same with me. You know, my family's Jamaican, but there's a little more influence
nowadays.
But let us not apologize for what has been done wrongly, okay?
Right.
What your parents did was wrong. What your mother did
was
even though they had good intentions.
Right, they did.
Yeah,
We're not questioning that. We're not questioning.
I'm not even mad at my parents for what they did.
It's just
they loved you. You know,
right now that I'm big, I understand it now. But when we were kids, it was hard
to grasp.
See it. It was hard to see.
And you know, this is transferred to God. Oftentimes, this fear and all the negative emotions that come along, people start seeing God in that punitive way.
It's true. How we're disciplined or loved by our parents actually transfers into how
Yes, it's very
fear. That word fear. That's what I just keep resonating with. I think you can discipline without having this fear factor. I was never scared of my mom and dad.
Yeah, you respected them, probably.
Absolutely.
You knew that they were going to limit you.
I think for me, it was more the disappointment knowing that, oh my goodness, I've disappointed her, and now she has an emotion because she's disappointed in me. So I think mine was more of disappointment, even though there's a fear factor mixed inside that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like fear, you know, I'm gonna die or something.
But let's go down to go to the source of wisdom, which is the Bible. And Llewellyn, you've had all this experience. Did you find something comforting in the Bible?
Yes, it was actually what we share, like the rod of discipline. I'm gonna share that because it actually connects with my experience and even experiences out there with the kids and the parents. So it's in Proverbs 13:24. It says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them." Now, the rod of discipline doesn't necessarily mean the rod, but it's a particular discipline. A discipline that would show the parents their love and concern. You know, as parents, the parents are God. They represent God here on earth. So the parents teach their kids to be obedient, to see the error of their ways, and they should not do discipline when they're angry. It should be
take a breath.
Take a breath.
Count to 10.
Take a day.
Take a deep breath. Pray for wisdom.
And they should see. The parents should let the children understand that they're not only grieving their parents, but our Father in heaven as well. You know, our Father in heaven wants us to be in the path of salvation, and that's what it is. That's what child discipline should be, that we need to be in the right path so we will be saved.
And the consequences will benefit us.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
More than anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Well, today we heard the Bible speak up and condemn child sexual abuse and other strong types of child maltreatment that have lasting impacts. Remember to visit our website, though, because there you will find many other information on child discipline, and you can download our SpeakUp notes, which talk about this issue. Now, if you're someone who you are hurting, maybe you are a survivor of a child abuse, know that God can heal all those wounds. spend time with him, seek him. And if you need somebody to pray with, call us. The number is right on their screen. You can also connect with us through the social media. Go to our website, you'll find out more. We will be praying for you, but also if you're a parent, remember, there are some things you can do, and you can give your child good discipline, good guidance in a loving way. Well, we will see you next time to speak up on issues that matter, both for your health and your happiness.